Okay. All right, for the next stage of doing this V60 holder, we are going to take a piece of plain flat walnut and we're gonna cut it down to the 225 by 225. This particular piece, it has some nice grain, but it has this crack in it right here. So what we're going to do is, the holder is basically in the center of this template. This template is obviously much smaller. Everything else is waste. So I think we will actually cut it out up here. Should be a pretty square corner. Okay, the next dimension that matters is thickness. So in the previous video, the model is actually 18 millimeters. I was doing it off of a stock piece of 19 millimeters, which is roughly a 3/4 piece of wood. I already had these milled flat and cut down. So this is not quite 19, it was 18. I just adjusted the piece, but it is really close to 18. I adjusted the CNC job material setting to 18. So there's no real wiggle, no extra off the top, but that's okay. It's still at least the thickness of the overall model. Okay, so next is setting up the CNC jig. So this is my 3D printed jig for the origami. So the key here is that we make sure this is completely straight. So the way we do that is I have these smaller pinholes that were set up with the CNC to be completely straight. So I just put these in here. And that's in good shape. And so then this sits in here. And the reason this is all in here is because double-sided jobs, they have to stay in exact position. And so this keeps it in exact position. You can see how tight it is. So when we flip this, we can trust that it's not going to go anywhere. And this jig keeps this in place even though we unclamp these corners, because I'll put a couple clamps in these corners, so that when we flip it, we're not moving. What we will do first, so basically in order for all of this to work, we have to get the XY origin exactly in center relative to this. So that's what this threaded thread is in this insert, is to give me exact center. And so I have 3D printed jigs, and this one is specifically modeled for one of the finest points. Even if we aren't going to use this, this is what we were going to use to XY origin, because it fits in there. We're about as close as we practically can get to the very center. So that tightens that down right in the center. This clip's pretty tight. Right in there. Okay, so here, the key is we will do origin and the XY. And we're good. So as long as I don't turn off the CNC, I don't rehome it, and I don't reset origin for XY, we can now go through toolpath changes and toolbit changes, just setting Z, and it'll stay on center. And I used a piece of paper method here. The CNC came with a touch-off thing, but I could never get it to dependably work. So this is a little more tedious, but I'm never mass producing anything. I just deal with it. And so we make sure Z is selected. From now on, that's all we were going to mess with.
2,000 years later.
Okay, so it looks like the whole model worked. As you can see, we lined up and we started to punch through, but the tab that's right here, here, and here actually seemed to keep it stable, which was my biggest concern. It does look like that wasn't all just rendering issue. I can fix this with sanding easy, but if I was to do more, all I would do with the finishing tool, I would just add a inside profile pass right here to clean that up. And I could even not move it right now actually and do that, and maybe I will, and that would fix that without even doing another tool change. This is the CNC version of creeping up on a line with the table saw, but we'll give this a try. You know, we're close, like another 0.1, maybe 0.2 millimeters. That's pretty good. for sanding it. We gotta sand it anyway. We're almost there. Starting to take shape. Okay, so when it was all said and done, I thought this looked good and was working out, and the CNC, fundamentally, nothing went wrong per se in the actual CNC job. But I noticed, one, there's this on ridge that really shouldn't be. With this lip, it's a little too thick. And so if you take the model 3D print it, there is technically a little lip there, but you can see this goes down pretty smooth, and then the intent was it rounds like on this side. The job did a pretty good job rounding here, but like we saw with the CNC, it's really not cutting this out clean, and it's not cutting deep enough, and it's really not cutting smooth enough. So this, even with sanding, this is fitting wobbly. So I figured out what the problem was, and so this was being cut by this bit. I used this bit, and this bit is very short depth. I used it because it pretty small round radius, and I figured it would work and work pretty good, but relatively quick cutting job. So instead, I'm changing to use this bit, and I'll go through in a follow-up video the changes that we made and the cut to get this to work. And I also changed how I cut the backside. So with the origami, on the bottom side, I do a cut with a bowl bit, so it's got a sharper lip here. Then the model that I did for the V60, which visually looks, smoother, a little more tapered, but functionally, this is actually kind of nice because it sits and holds in a cup maybe a little better. But the CNC job is much faster, and it can be cut much quicker with a bigger bit, with a bowl bit. And so I'm technically going to keep the same 3D model, but on the bottom side, instead of it being a 3D finishing and roughing pad, I'm going to change it to just cut off the vector from the 3D model with a bowl bit, like I do the origami, and it will look more like this. So that'll be faster. But on the top side, with this bit, this will be slower than the other way I was cutting it. But it should be able to get the depth down all the way to where it's supposed to. I'll take a little more time, but ultimately should get the finish a little smoother. So there'll be no odd ridge here, and sanding should be easier and better, and it should fit more stable, closer to the 3D print that I'm okay with. So this is concluding that this video and the CNC job technically is a failure. Again, I view everything as iterative trial and error and learning. So to me, it's not a failure, it's just a process. So I'm going to finish this video, put it up. I'll do another video where I go through the changes that I do to the CNC job and doing that CNC job and final output for it.